This is Parana. Parana is one of Brazil's southern states, with the coastal area traditionally inhabited by Caiçara, Quilombola and Guarani communities. For centuries, the local communities have used the land and surrounding areas for fishing, hunting and small-scale extraction of vines and wood. Their livelihoods were largely based on the forest and traditional practices of subsistence farming, with this harmonious coexistence leaving the area as one of the most well-preserved of the Atlantic forest biome. However, in the 1960s loggers arrived, which then led to the arrival of conservation NGOs in the 1990s, such as SPVS. SPVS, along with the Nature Conservancy, began the Guaraquecaba Climate Action Project in 2001, a nearly 19,000 hectares forest conservation project in Parana. It has been internationally presented as a pioneer model for REDD projects as a way to mitigate climate change. The programme involved quantifying emissions saved by not cutting down forests and selling these as carbon credits. As one of the first actions, SPVS prohibited further farming in the area and the use of the forest by the local community. They also installed forest police, known as Forca Verde, in order to enforce these rules. The official aims of the project included the sustainable development of local communities, with 47 locals initially employed as forest rangers. There is significant controversy when addressing the impact of the programme on local communities within Parana. Many local people say that their access to forests and rivers has been restricted even on community land, with others reporting that the forest police entered their homes without authorization and threatened their families.
Se entrar, a polícia já te leva preso ou te dá uns tiros no mato.
E muitos aqui no Rio Pequeno entravam na casa das pessoas, fazem denúncia, entram na casa das pessoas, tiram as coisas que as pessoas têm. Então é errado, isso é muito errado.
E às vezes acaba de acontecer acidente, né? De pessoas da comunidade levar tiro, né?
E a liberdade acabou, né? Compra um pedaço aqui, compra um pedaço ali, mas depois aqui nós não temos nem onde sair mais também.
The communities have also reported a huge decrease in employment opportunities since SPVS arrived. The 47 jobs that were initially created were promised to last for 40 years. However, almost all of the employees were soon fired with little justification, and other training and skill-building initiatives dwindled out as the conservation groups ran out of money.
Tá tão ruim assim que hoje eu já penso em ir embora, assim, pra procurar um emprego na cidade grande. Dá vontade de ficar, mas desse jeito que não tem condições.
This project has therefore limited the diversification of local livelihood activities, leaving communities more vulnerable. The Sustainable Livelihoods Framework addresses how livelihood outcomes are shaped by the assets that are available to them, which can help to determine possible livelihood strategies. Many people in low-income countries therefore undertake a range of these strategies in order to reduce their vulnerability to shocks and seasonality. The fact that access to assets have been taken away in this context has resulted in local people being more vulnerable and subject to negative livelihood outcomes. The negative impacts of this project have resulted in conflicts between the local people and the SPVS. While the locals were interested in maintaining their cultural heritage by continuing their self-sustenance lifestyles in the forest, the SPVS concentrated on conservation activities which focused on sequestering carbon in favour of offsetting emissions by large TNCs that they worked with. In this neo-pluralistic perspective, the SPVS suppressed the interests of the locals, thereby restricting them from participating in decision-making. This case of non-decision-making meant that the locals wanted to fight back for greater security of the land that was once theirs.
Some local inhabitants have organised to resist the restrictive action of SPVS. In 2003, some local communities occupied an area of land to prevent its sale to SPVS. This was done in a move of solidarity with small landless farmers without official land ownership who were at risk of eviction. A camp was then formed in the hope for it to be recognised as an agrarian reform settlement by the Brazilian government. The environmental authorities have ignored the reports from the local community regarding how ranch owners have been putting pressure on them and how they have been using agrochemicals. As an alternative approach, they carried out small reforestation projects and collective agroforestry projects, combining organic farming with the cultivation of trees, leading to the recuperation of formerly abandoned land. Food is sold to nearby schools via a national school nutrition programme, but families also gather small parcels for themselves. While there are no direct mobilisations against SPVS, communities have received international support, with several environmental justice organisations and journalists raising awareness for their changed living circumstances as a result of the project. Awareness has also been raised against carbon offsetting policies in general, as these would just allow corporations to buy credits to make up for their caused environmental damage. In this way, the social mobilisation around the Jose Lutzenberger camp has provided a sustainable community response to the conflict and recently found wider acknowledgement. Though the government did not play a direct role in this transformation to sustainability, they did in some ways facilitate the degradation of these communities by not holding NGOs to account when they did not fulfil their promises. One of the few successful long-term aspects of the project for the community was the adoption of a bee farming programme, where local people were able to keep bees and gather honey for them to sell as an alternative source of income. Ecotourism also created another livelihood option for communities. As a result of these aspects of the project, families' livelihood options have been somewhat diversified as drawn on by the Sustainable Livelihoods Framework. This can be considered an example of how the project has created new opportunities that can increase family income and also preserve the forest. The impacts of the project seem to have tremendously and irreversibly impacted the local communities. However, some local groups were able to respond positively despite the profound socio-economic changes and social problems as a result of the restrictions and pressures on their way of life. In the meantime, the community in the camp went on to receive the Juliana Santilli Award in 2017, along with some financial support for their efforts in conservation and sustainable practices. The media coverage of the case has also helped create greater critical awareness of the problems that can arise from RED and other similar conservation projects around the world.